Hello, welcome back to Painkiller Redemption. I've got my double ammo card placed, which makes this level a whole load easier, because instead of having to try and use all the really terrible weapons, I can just shit out rockets and shotgun shells all day long, without worrying. Not going to get that card condition. So, this is the worst level in the entire game as far as I'm concerned. It's almost an achievement, but well, it's got a lot of competition, and somehow comes out on top, for reasons we'll see in a moment. First section's pretty easy, because they all spawn in one place. Rest of the level, not that nice, generally speaking. And we're starting to see the problem with this level, which is these ranged guys. No matter how much you're jumping about, bunny hopping and dodging all around, they will still manage to hit you, and there's not an awful lot you can do about it. It's a bit of a nightmare, honestly, when there are only 3 or 4 like there were there. When you've got 15 of them, as well as a whole bunch of people chasing you, get you in melee, they become the biggest danger, frankly, in the entire game. Far worse than any boss or mini-boss, as far as I'm concerned. So here, this is the original, having done several practice runs, my original take for this was horribly out of sync, so I've had to go back and redo this, and this is the first time I've come back with enough coins to place that card, so I'm still forgetting that I can keep using my shotgun and using the painkiller and things. So yes, you may notice that we do in fact have the painkiller this time. For some reason, having given us the overdose weapons last time, at least some of the overdose weapons, this level we now get the weapons from the original game, which we'll see a bit more of later. The machine gun, chain gun, rocket launcher thing is basically exactly the same, as is the shotgun. Painkiller, again, is basically the Razor Cube is a reskin of the Painkiller. And finish this section, finally. Quite long and optically interesting. Forgot there wasn't even anything over here, so to run around and grab all the ammo before we grab the checkpoint there. Now, yeah, for some reason they take ages to spawn the enemies in here. Later on we won't even get time to breathe or pick up any ammo or really do anything, but here you can stand there for 10 seconds with nothing happening. I thought for a minute it had bugged out and I was going to have to do that again, but fortunately not. And here, not quite remembering that I could use my good weapons without fear, trying to use the stake gun, which, alright in the original game, where you could use it on a few people, but in these relatively small arenas, where you've got loads of people around, sniping weapon is not massively useful, particularly with the arc and slightly dodgy hitboxes on a lot of these enemies, which we will see a bit more of later, but suffice to say, they were hard enough to hit as it is. I have no idea what the rocket hit there to cause it to blow up next to me. Maybe it was a flying part of a corpse, don't know. So yeah, spawning a lot of people in very quickly, hopping around in circles until they stop, so I can blow them all up. Like so. And now I can just cheese the rest of this bit, no problem. Basically invincible for the next 20 seconds or so, which is a blessing, really. Though that probably wasn't the best time to get it, but there we go. It's not the first time I'll be hopping about and forgetting I ran out of machine gun, chain gun ammo. Because while it is a lot more plentiful with my double ammo, still not too much of it lying around. Although, considering it's a relatively powerful alt fire, it's not particularly surprising. Being a bit stupid and getting hit there, I know. Now they're going to spawn enemies up there, which serves little other purpose than making them slightly harder to shoot. They're not much more deadly than putting them down, considering their numbers and the fact that you can actually move around here. Also, they're relatively slowly spawning in for this game. Although they have immediately got a couple more over here now when I thought I was done. It's a little surprising. Now, one rocket, and then you can collect up all those delicious souls. Again, thoroughly uninteresting. Now we're going back to just spawning a whole load of people in one place. I didn't quite get there quickly enough to use the Painkiller's beam fire, just take them all out as they dropped in. Sadly, would have made it easier, but at least because they're ranged people, they don't have to move around too much, so they do like to stand in one place where you can take them all out with a rocket or two. Again, a very long gap where they're not giving me any enemies. And there is the freeze fire. Hit one enemy, not very useful when there are 20 of them. And they're all the same. No one is particularly threatening. So, up there, you jump up that wall, and then hit the ledge and it'll teleport you over to where those golden holy items are. I spent ages trying to get it and then just edited that bit out and showed you where it was, because frankly, having already recorded this level once and done several practice runs, it takes sort of 10 minutes of basically trial and error trying to jump up a steep slope which doesn't seem like it was meant to be jumped up. This room is the worst room in the level, the worst level in the game. That back there is Death Water. As if it wasn't already small enough. Half of the level you can't even go in. You'll see me fall in there later. And then we'll see exactly how terrible it is. It's not too difficult to get out of there. Other times it'll be a bit more of a problem. Yeah, it doesn't do too much damage. But yeah, when I said that jumping around didn't really help when they spawn 20 or 30 of these guys in at once, this section is exactly what I meant. There are so many of them, and it's just a nightmare. Which, if I could have got this sort of 10 kills earlier if I'd picked up a few more souls in the earlier runs. I could have just skipped through all that as opposed to losing a lot of health and most of the armor you get. But yeah, the saving grace of this run is that block in the middle where, because the pathing, the AI pathing, isn't very good, they do tend to get stuck behind it, and you can run around the back there, use it to block them off. Or at least get them all to roughly line up around the edge for you to shoot them. And as long as they don't come around the back, it's alright. They just chuck one suicide bomber at us, who is entirely unthreatening when he's the only person there. And I will be hopping around in circles for a reasonably long time here, because they do just keep spawning in this section. And this isn't even the worst offender yet. Indeed, there are so many of them at once that I ran out of time before I could collect all the souls I'd produced from that one rocket without getting hurt. Now, you will see me running behind there and standing still and saving a lot, particularly in this run, because, again, having done this so many times before, hating it so much, did not want to get caught up here. And actually, this run was surprisingly good. In the original recording, this is actually the first time through here. In the original recording, it was almost 3 hours of save scumming and having to just constantly die and reload and die and reload. It's because there are so few checkpoints in some parts of this, and the rooms are so small that they just wear you down, and one mistake, or in a tiny room, or not very many mistakes in a 10-minute run, you just have to keep replaying it over and over again. So yeah, a lot of quick saving, so I don't have to do too much again. Luckily, one thing they do tend to do is, if you run around the back, a lot of the time the crowds of enemies are so big that they just get trapped and they will fall in the death water, and while it doesn't hurt them, it does mean that they can't then jump out again. So you get them in there, and unless they're ranged enemies, you can just leave them there for as long as you want. And there are a couple of times, again not so much in this incredibly lucky run, but it is not entirely uncommon for me to get lost and not realise there's one in there, and spend a while looking around thinking there might be one on that block before I realise. So yeah, the card condition for this level is collect 700 souls, and I don't do that, but it's not a particularly useful card, and I still get enough of them to ease through an awful lot of the level. So this is the famous lightning and shuriken gun, which on top of being really cool, is also pretty powerful and has a lot of ammo. Pretty useful. I don't know why I'm not really using it more, actually, I guess because the shotgun and the rocket launcher are the things I'm used to using, because they're really the main effective weapons in the Overdose set. And rest assured, the jumping between weapons set is not over. In fact, I think every single level they swap to the other one. Just sort of, instead of setting you up with them over time like they did in the other games, they just sort of give you an entire set, and then the next level they'll swap them out for something else. So then once you've got used to those and decided which ones you like, oh no, you're back to the other ones again. And we are finally done with this bit. Probably feels a lot longer than it actually was, but there we go. A slightly larger room with no death water next, which is nice. It's actually not a very difficult room, providing you've got out of the earlier one with health, and even then there's plenty of health and armour in here, with the 100 health pickup and the armour next to it. But again, like the rest of this level, that's only useful if you've got weapons. And as you can see looking around the room, it's fairly bare, almost about as bare as the last room, and will take about as long. Now, at least it's slightly larger, so it's harder to mess up and less frustrating, but I can still do with a little more variety or number of weapon pickups. Now, this group I've been spawned here is actually so big that I was having trouble getting it far enough away to hit it with a rocket without blowing myself up in the process. Which, again, just spawn them a little slower, would make the game a little more interesting. Maybe have more than 2 places you're spawning them, or something. I don't know, just anything to break the monotony of how they're running this. So again, massive numbers of ranged enemies here. Luckily, the room's pretty big, there's not even really any obstacles for you to stand behind, so they do literally just all start in one place. Easy to hit them with rockets. This bit was weird, I'd never seen this before. They basically all spawned right behind that pillar, and I think they usually spawn there, but they got stuck a lot this time, so I was having trouble sort of working out where they were for a second. I was a little confused. Now, thanks to the miracle of the bars, which are actually just a wall, I can just pile rockets into the back there, and just hit anything that spawns down there. So, yeah, that was a mistake. I picked up the health pickup. I thought it maxed out at 250, but actually it'll only fill me up to 200. I wasted a bit there. Not a massive problem, I don't actually need it. But it's not entirely nice to do. You panic for a second. A bit confused. So those cans they're throwing, they're different variants. These ones do damage over time. Some of the other soldiers throw straight up explosive grenades. And they are not particularly fun to deal with because, kind of like the staff guys from the last video, they just kind of sit on the ground being in the way. But at least in the last video, when we met them, we had relatively large arenas. And in that first section of the last room, we had loads of those guys spawning, and if you let them get too numerous too quickly, you don't have any way of really getting past them, you're out of rockets, or you don't have a demon morph anytime soon, they can be an absolute nightmare, because there's just nowhere in the room you can stand or jump through without getting hurt. Managed to shoot that guy out of the air. At this point I was mostly bored, and just to see if I could really. yes, look how small this room is. My complaining about small rooms has not been entirely lies. This is in fact a complete mess, spawning just as many as they did in the last room, but in a tiny area where you've got a bunch of ranged guys who can hit you pretty much wherever you stand, and no chance to really stop or anything because all these guys are chasing you from behind. There's not a lot of empty space to escape into. And considering a lot of the ways to make this game playable, and indeed the original game, combat was heavily based on your mobility and being able to dodge around things, and indeed practically impossible without bunny hopping to make yourself go faster and generally manoeuvre. It's difficult when you don't have any space to do that in, and I cannot fathom how people would do this on the higher difficulties. Luckily it's only a short bit, and we're into a whole new room full of stupidity. Blow up the barrel before I hurt myself with it. So you will notice that that crate, unlike all the other identical crates we've been smashing, can't be broken. There is a reason for that, but it's kind of more because of the, I don't know whether it's incompetence, laziness, or what really, of the developers, but there is technically a reason for that, even if it's not particularly good and there should have been a better solution. So you may at this point be noticing that all the enemies pretty much look the same, or at least very similar. Yeah, this level is, well, entirely grey, uninteresting to look at, and at points I have trouble telling between these guys who just melee and the almost exactly identical ranged people. You may also have noticed that they were spawning in the middle of that massive hole in the ceiling. The original game often had people walking off ledges to jump down to you. They rarely had them just spawning in mid-air and jumping, sort of falling down at you. There was no real reason they couldn't have dropped them there. Remember that hole, we will be going back. Also, a bit confused about where to go next after that checkpoint. You'll notice the box is now on fire. And yeah, now it's breakable. And now, in the last video, you may remember, we had the jump pad. It glowed blue. This level, it doesn't, for no particular reason. That also a room. Not any real reason for that there. There are very few enemies. And having walked through that checkpoint, they basically moved the barrier 10 feet forward, which expanded the room slightly, which I have no real problem with it, apart from the fact it was not nearly enough. But look at the mess we've now got to fight in here. And this is where I stupidly decided to try and get the demon morph instead of continuing to kill them. Which, on the plus side, does save me a whole load of trouble. So you may have noticed that most of the enemies up to this point are military themed, and they all look roughly like sort of 20th century, early 20th century soldiers, like you might see in a World War I or II thing. I'm not a historian, I don't really know exactly where they're from, but these guys are nothing like it. All of a sudden we're dumped in this lava pit with the burning skeletons. And they also have annoying hitboxes. So this section is frankly even worse. This is like the Death Water from earlier, except you have to jump into it to get across, as far as I can tell. They spawn all the enemies in it. They're all the same enemy. And they're really very tiny area, which isn't covered in Death Water. So I'm basically limited to dodging backwards and forwards on this platform. Until I have to get to the guys back there, who you can't really hit because, well, Bloom. Yeah. Not very easy to see them through all that. And that's really... We're stuck here for several minutes, so... Not a particularly good area, I think. Again, alright. Nice change if you're just passing through on a multiplayer visit. For going somewhere else where you might find someone to fight. Here, when they're spawning waves... Yeah. Okay. And again, they've put a checkpoint there for no real reason after one tiny wave just to move the barrier a few feet. Which admittedly does give me a little more space, but not a lot. I'm still essentially restricted. I guess I could jump across. Since they're all spawning from here, I could then snipe them. But I have a feeling their weapons are probably more accurate and in larger volume than mine. So, don't think I'd be doing any better at the longer range, standing on the other side of the annoying lava pit. So yeah, the cans of gas just sitting on the ground dealing damage. Tiny area, they're a bit of a mess and you can't really get past them. Luckily this area isn't too long. And we're now out of it. Oh wait! The smallest room yet. Again, at least they do mostly spawn enemies in one place. 6 or 7 of that one guy. And again, another jump pad unlabeled. Just run forward. Oh. No wall there. And you take fall damage. The fall... When you inevitably mess that up, you have to take fall damage. And not great, I have to say. So, this room might not look particularly small, but that's a really tight corridor. Particularly because you don't have a lot of room at the end to dodge around in, unlike the tight corridors at the end of the first level. So if you've got 10-15 of those guys clogging it up, you've got no chance to get past. Once they come out at the end, you're pretty much stuck. Luckily, I do have some chain gun ammo at this point, so I can just kind of mow them down as they walk in. Fish in a barrel. And I think you must be heavier in Demon Morph mode or something, because you can't actually bounce up there then. Luckily we can get back up. So, a little confused, there's one guy over here, he's fallen down. So now I'm going to proceed to just pin him to the ground like that. And then we can move on into another very similar room. Where they're spawning very similar areas in similar numbers and patterns, so we can fight them in the same way. I have literally no idea why I'm using the stake gun at this point. It is in no way effective for this situation or really any other in the game, apart from possibly at the, well, the last couple of levels, it does become ever so slightly relevant, although there are still better options for that use. And there is a third fire mode for the Shuriken Lightning Gun, which puts down a sort of air of effect mine thing, and you can block off that passage pretty effectively with it, which is a blessing, really. It's the one good thing about the thin passageways. Didn't help though, I still had to end up trying to jump over their heads. Luckily I had the height advantage, so I could have got up. I don't think I would have been able to do that. I just have got caught in the mass and died if I was going the other way. So remember that hole from earlier? This is it. We can get... oh, what? What just happened? Oh. Yeah, they're fixed for not letting you jump back down into the earlier bit of the level. It's just to teleport you back up. Though it does have the effect of letting all the little bits of enemies slide down. Which is nice, I suppose. Again, just hitting something right next to me with a rocket takes an awful lot of health away. So yeah, where's the last guy? And yeah, they'll teleport you back up, but the enemies are free to run down there and get stuck. So that really confused me the first time through. And thankfully we now are done with the level. So that is that, the worst level. Managed to speed it up quite a lot with this being such a late run through. Having to do it again and again. I'm afraid we do get to sit through this. But at least it's mostly over now, the long count is done. So that's that. And I will see you next time for Refinery. Thank you for watching.